Promising treatments for osteoarthritis. DECRYPTION No drug today can cure osteoarthritis or stop its development. All eyes are on research, which is very active, in order to counter pain but also regenerate cartilage. A staircase that is increasingly difficult to climb, finger movements that cause pain, the kitchen cupboard that is difficult to reach by raising your arm. All signs that evoke osteoarthritis. This condition concerns 8 to 15% of the population and, according to the National Institute of Health and Medical Research, Inserm, 65% of those over 65 years old. Contrary to popular belief, it has nothing to do with bone wear. This is a disease in its own right involving biochemical and enzymatic processes that result in the progressive destruction of the structures of the joints, cartilage, subchondral bone and synovial membrane. Despite the huge market that this pathology represents for laboratories, the therapeutic arsenal has hardly evolved for years. Worse, certain molecules widely used to soothe osteoarthritis pain seem to be of little use. This is, in particular, the case of paracetamol. The Cochrane review published in 2019 shows that it only improves pain and physical function very little. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs are prescribed as first-line but are not suitable for all patients. Opiates must be consumed exceptionally and hyaluronic acid injections have been reimbursed since 2019. In short, treatments are few and leave a lot dissatisfied patient. A better understood disease is. The needs for new molecules are enormous, summarizes Professor Francis Berenbaum, head of the rheumatology department at St. Antoine Hospital in Paris. Fortunately, research is very active, both in understanding the mechanisms of osteoarthritis and in developing new treatment. We know this disease much better today than 10 years ago, assures Professor Jérémy Selim, rheumatologist at St. Antoine Hospital. We know that there are osteoarthritis which differ according to whether they have their origin in overweight, joint trauma or ag. This distinction between different diseases suggests specific treatments for this or that form. Will this better knowledge of the disease allow the emergence of new therapies? Some avenues arousing a lot of hope have nevertheless led to dead end. This is the case of anti-TNFs, a new therapeutic class resulting from genetic engineering, biotherapy, used successfully in several rheumatological indications to limit the inflammatory reaction but totally ineffective on osteoarthritis. Ditto for anti-NGF, antibodies directed against the growth factors of pain-transmitting cell. The idea was that by inhibiting them, the pain signal would rect. In fact, it worked. But, at the end of October 2021, all research on tanezumab, the molecule undergoing the most advanced trials, was stopped. A small number of patients developed, in fact, rapid destructive osteoarthritis. In other words, the destruction of their joint suddenly accelerate. Another showered hope, that placed in the sprifermine. In studies, this growth factor of cartilage cells, chondrocytes, allows a reconstitution of the cartilage suggesting a curative treatment. But despite this structural effect, the symptoms remain the same and the patients still feel as much pain, regrets Professor Sella. A trial drew. Fortunately, there are other lines of research fueling the expectation of a new drew. Among them, work focuses on the cell signaling pathway WNT, which allows the transmission of a message inside a cell to modify its activity. Its imbalances play a role in the development of osteoarthritis. The product being studied, lorisavivant, targets chondrocytes by preventing them from producing what will destroy the cartilage matrix, explains Professor Berenbaum. Phase 3 trials are underway for this drug administered as an intra-articular injection and currently targeting osteoarthritis of the KNE. It must confirm the good results observed during the previous stages, which showed a slowing down of cartilage destruction. Here again, as with sprifermine, the great unknown remains the effects on symptoms, considered by health agencies as an essential criterion for the validation of a new disease-modifying treatment. The underlying idea is to delay the placement of a prosthesis and the associated cost. Vagus nerve stimulation. A solution may come from auricular stimulation of the vagus nerve, This cranial nerve, which extends to the abdomen through the neck and thorax, belongs to the autonomic nervous system and is used for the functioning of many internal organs. It has the particularity of producing anti-inflammatory effects when it is stimulated, a characteristic already used in the management of migraine, callopathy or epilepsy. With regard to osteoarthritis, the idea of the researchers is to stimulate the nerve in a non-invasive way, via a small box placed at the level of the ear, where the nerve endings are. After an initial test in 18 patients with painful erosive osteoarthritis of the hand, the device is well tolerated and reduces pain, describes Professor Selim, who is coordinating the trials on the subject. These good results must now be confirmed in a TES, randomized versus sham stimulation. The first results of this study, launched in April 2021 in 18 centers, are expected at the end of 2022. Stem cell injection. Can stem cells come to the rescue in the management of osteoarthritis? This is one of the research avenues generating the most WOR. For 5 years, several placebo-controlled studies and some meta-analyses have described a benefit of cell therapy, at least on symptoms, reports Professor Christian Jorgensen, director of the Institute of Regenerative Medicine and Biotherapy. They remain for modest at the moment, around 30% on pain and function. But by stimulating the basic mesenchymal cells, which can differentiate into several types of cells, we have managed to promote their differentiation into chondrocytes, and to improve painful symptoms by at least 50. Stem cells represent the therapies of tomorrow. They will help to rebuild the tissue. In addition to their anti-inflammatory and analgesic effect, they seem capable of improving the structure of diseased joints, continues the doctor. The European ADIPOA study, which he oversees from the Montpellier University Hospital, is responsible for observing the effects of injections into the joint of mesenchymal stem cells taken from the adipose tissue of patient. It ends at the end of January 2022 and will be followed a few months later by Phase 3. Patches and bioprostheses. We will surely focus on allogeneic rather than endogenous cells, specifies Pro. Jorgens. The mesenchymal cells will no longer be removed and then re-injected into the same patient donor and will thus be able to serve 200 people, without any problem of rejection. If the preliminary results are confirmed, the challenge will then be to have operational bioproduction platform. However, these very expensive structures do not currently exist in France. Only one site is under construction in Montpellier, which should be finished in 2024. Research around stem cells continues in an attempt to maximize their effect. Inserm and the University Hospital of Strasbourg are developing a patch made up of biomaterials on which are inserted the mesenchymal cells which can be placed directly in the joint. We print in 3D part of the damaged cartilage with a bioink in which we integrate the stem cells, illustrates Professor Jorgens. It will then be possible to manufacture biological prostheses. The prostheses, made of titanium, could give way to new living joint. All joints are affected. All sexes combined, after 65 years, the percentage of osteoarthritis detected varies according to the joint. The neck, the lumbar vertebrae and the hand are the most affected. Neck. 75% of case. After 40 years, cervical osteoarthritis, cervicarthrosis, almost always appears on X-rays without necessarily causing symptom, but it can rhyme with stiff neck and neck pain, cervicalgia. Knee. 30% of case. Knee osteoarthritis mainly affects women after 40 years. The pain, felt on the outside or inside of the knee, is mainly triggered by physical activity, walking, going up or down stair. Hip. 10% of case. Hip osteoarthritis usually appears around the age of 60. Pain most often occurs in the crease of the buttock or groin, but may radiate to the knee, running down the front of the thigh. Hand. 60% of case. Hand osteoarthritis is common in postmenopausal women. It results in pain and deformities in the last phalanges of the fingers, digital osteoarthritis, or the root of the thumb, rhizarthrosis. Foot. 10% of cases. This type of osteoarthritis mainly affects high-level athletes. Regular microtraumas, people who have suffered major trauma, sprains or fractures, and those with malformations, hallux valgus, in particular. Lumbar, 70% of case. Lumbar osteoarthritis is the most common spinal osteoarthritis. The pain occurs every day and gets worse during physical activity or during static postures, standing, sitting, kneeling, that are too long. Weight loss and exercise, the winning do. The management of osteoarthritis requires a first-line non-drug approach, partly linked to the motivation of the patient and his doctor to support him, underlines Professor Jérémy Sella. It is therefore above all a matter of losing weight. A 5% weight loss is enough to feel a benefit on pain and mobility, and practicing physical activity. This involves both daily walking to strengthen the muscles and thus increase the stability of the joints, and work centered on the joints in question with a physiotherapist. Wearing insoles, knee pads or orthotics can complete this picture. In addition, drugs can reduce the symptoms. Nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NSAIDs, paracetamol, and infiltration of hyaluronic acid or corticosteroids can temporarily soothe a painful crisis. Most patients are disappointed with the results of their treatment because they often only follow one measure, continues Professor Sella. However, when they combine them, they often manage to be relieved. Abnormal cartilage WEA. Osteoarthritis is a disease of the cartilage, of unpredictable evolution, caused by an imbalance between the production and the destruction of cartilage. This tissue, more or less thick depending on the joint, is usually renewed in 3 months. Tiny pieces are permanently detached from it, evacuated thanks to the synovial membrane, which continuously produces synovial fluid, lubricating the joint. Cartilage is made up of water, collagen and chondrocytes, which are cells specialized in its regeneration. When they are overstressed, the latter are exhaust. Result: the cartilage, which lines the bone ends of the joint and allows them to slide without friction one on the other, decreases until it disappears. Gradually deprived of this shock absorber, the subchondral bone, located under the cartilage, is left bar, holes, geodes, and bony growths, parrot's beaks, or osteophytes, a P. To know. A joint affected by osteoarthritis does not always hurt. 60% of people over 65 have painless osteoarthritis. Conversely, according to the French Association for the Fight Against Rheumatism, AFLAR, in 35% of people suffering from osteoarthritis, the pain began before the age of 40. Expensive plasma injection. The principle is simple. Blood is taken from the patient, then passed through a centrifuge which separates the red blood cells from the plasma containing the platelet. This is then extracted and injected into the joint. Proposed by many health centers, this technique still lacks evidence of effectiveness. We do not really know if it works, summarizes Professor Francis Barenbaum. What is certain is that it is very profitable for those who practice it. An empty syringe used for the preparation costs around €80 and the gesture is sometimes invoiced between €500 and €1,000. The place of surgery. Ultimate treatment of the arthritic joint. The installation of a prosthesis requires a surgical intervention, arthroplasty. It is indicated for the hip or the knee in case of severe disability. This artificial joint usually makes it possible to significantly improve the quality of life, but its effectiveness is limited to about 15 years on average. A question of ag. Osteoarthritis increases with age, but it does not exclusively affect the elderly. 3% of those under 45 are affected, compared to 65% of those over 65 and 80% of those over 80.